I guess this will take us on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's really important. As I was reading, I was astonished by what you were just mentioning, or just talking about. I don't recall if it was um, correlation of zero point 0.7 or zero point 0.9, but that, I mean, very high either way, of depression and anxiety. But I'm an N of one. But I have a history of both depression and anxiety, and if you look on both sides of my family, you see that as well. And I think that the initial response that most people probably have when they hear this is something fatalistic. It's like, well, okay, I'm destined to be depressed and anxious. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. It's genetically determined. But I have the sense that you don't feel this way. You think of this knowledge as empowering, and it will be very useful for psychiatrists, and not only for diagnosing psychopathologies in advance, and I can see that, or predicting. Maybe it helps with preparation in some sense. But how going forward do you think that this sort of this improved understanding of the etiology of psychopathologies will improve treatment?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I mean, that's the big question, really. And as you say, I do feel that it's important for understanding ourselves to understand genetics. Just taking the environmentalistic point of view, what good is it to think your anxiety was caused by the way your mother treated you in the first few years of life? That isn't too cool either. I mean, I know some people have gone through that sort of psychiatric thing. And I actually have a son-in-law who didn't talk to his parents for 2 years after that sort of therapy, because he was convinced that all his problems in life were due to the way his parents treated him in the first few years of life. So it's just not true. I mean, there's just no evidence for that. So about genetics now, we're beginning to be able to predict these things or these problems using DNA itself. So people say, well, that doesn't, if I think, if I take a fatalistic point of view, I say, well, I can't do anything about it. So what good is that? But actually, I was the first person to have I call it pheno-wide polygenic scores. I got polygenic scores for everything that existed when I wrote Blueprint. And I presented them in the book for myself. And my worst polygenic score is for obesity. I'm at the 94th percentile of genetic risk. It isn't obesity, it's just body weight. I mean, obesity again is not a etiologically distinct disorder. It is merely the quantitative extreme of this dimension of genetic and environmental influence. So I'm at the 94th percentile, but my actual weight is only at the 70th percentile. So actually, I'm not as heavy as I should be, but it was very liberating for me to find out about that, because weight is very substantially genetically influenced. It is, you skinny people don't understand that some people put on weight a lot more easily. And in psychology, we talk about satiety, the sense of feeling full, and also responsiveness to food cues. And I'm screwed for both. If I walk by, I just think about walking by a bakery and the smells of a bakery. My mouth starts to water. And if I
You
went
and me
in there,
both.
I just get a little cookie or something. No, I'll pig out because I just feel so good. And satiety is the other interesting one. I don't know if this happens to you, but when I go out to dinner with friends and they're finished eating, there's food on the table. They say, "Do you want any more?" No, I'm full. But then I'll just keep eating. And if they ate any more, they'd get sick. But I just keep eating. So naturally, I'm going to put on weight more.
Totally.
And people, yeah. Well, people tell me, well, just pull up your socks, as they say in England. Um, get control of yourself and don't do that. Well, easier said than done, because you don't intentionally sit down to pig out, but it just does happen, and you put on a pound and another pound and another pound, and it's invidious. It just keeps growing. So I found it liberating, though, because it makes me realize it's not just a matter of uh, being more in control of myself. It's realizing you're really in a lifelong battle of the bulge here. And what I what you got to do is get serious about it and say, I've got to engineer my environment. I just don't have snack food around, because I know with the best of intentions, sometimes late at night you're tired or whatever, you just say, I'll just have a crisp or some, potato chip. And then before you know it, the whole bag's gone, that sort of thing. So uh, I've it to the contrary, where people say, "Oh, it just means if you find out you have a high genetic propensity for weight, you're just going to say, I give up. I'm just going to be a genetic fatty. Nothing I can do about it." But to the contrary, I think it works the other way. It's kind of motivating to say, "I've got a battle here. It's not my fault. It's a biological thing." And now with semaglutide, do you know the semaglutide story? The Wegovy, Ozempic. Uh, it, I've lost 20 pounds. I've been on it for about 5 or 6 months with no effort. It just makes me a normal person. I don't crave food the same way. I enjoy food, but I was out at dinner last night with friends, and I amazed myself. I didn't finish everything on my plate or on the table. I just said, no, I kind of feel full. And, so that, and then we know with these semaglutides, that if you stop taking them, your weight goes back up. And that, I think, also indicates the biological nature of this issue. And in England, the main criticism of these is it's just too easy. People shouldn't be able to lose weight that easily. It should be a matter of, like a puritanical attitude towards it. You've got to suffer and get some control of yourself. It ought to be painful. And I think it's just wonderful. You think of what it would do at a public health level if we could reduce weight on average in the population, diabetes, heart problems. There's so many things related to weight. So that's a long way of answering your question, that I find it for most of these polygenic scores, if you knew you had a high genetic propensity to alcoholism, do you just say, oh, well, I'm going to be an alcoholic? No. You just say, if you drink as much as other people, you're at greater risk. And you're not going to become an alcoholic unless you drink a lot of alcohol over a long period of time. So you do what we're all supposed to do. Take breaks from alcohol. See how addicted you are to it. So there's low-tech solutions to these things, but I think it gives us control. And aside from all of that, it does really seem to me that part of understanding yourself is understanding the extent to which genetics influences what you do. So another.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. I mean, the knowledge of one's genetic background and predispositions, it doesn't need to result in fatalism, because it enables agency by giving you the power and showing the necessity of this to control your environment rather than relegating yourself to a state of helplessness. The one place that, and maybe this isn't a disagreement, but you referenced the sorts of therapies that set your son-in-law back a couple of years. I see these therapies as also being very useful in the sense that maybe they can help show you or give you the power to alter your environment.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, I see
I
that
think
more
that
as,
this.
I would just say, CBT, cognitive behavior therapies, they're great. We all ought to do it. It's sort of like, healthy thinking. But the essence of Freudian psychoanalytic therapy really does have this theory of to solve your problems now, you've got to go back to your childhood and resolve these conflicts. And I think that's counterproductive. I just don't think the evidence is there. It's good to have a professional handholder to think about your life and what you're doing, but ruminating about the past and your parents' treatment, I think the evidence isn't good that it's helpful. But I think therapy is great in the CBT sort of way, cognitive behavior therapy, and mindfulness. I'm a big fan of mindfulness. So I didn't mean that to be anti-therapeutic at all, but just kind of anti-psychoanalytic.